Welcome everybody to webinar 5. Today is Wednesday the 9th of February. Today's webinar we are looking at SketchUp using the layout book to publish your designs. So Mita is going to be presenting the webinar today. Part 1 is that we'll be doing a little review regarding the SketchUp and populating the model. And then in part 2, we'll be looking at the layout book, importing sketches, importing other files and images, and then talking about how we'll then export the layout book itself. We will be issuing a SketchUp file, which is SK21 LCO4, so that you can actually work with our model, and then also we'll also provide you with the layout book. So just very briefly, the webinars, as you know, are divided into two parts: the concept phase and the development phase. So today is the last webinar of the concept phase, where we're now looking at how we will use the layout book to present our ideas. Typical shortcuts, as we talked about every week. And so what we're going to do today, we're going to open up SketchUp file SK21, and we're going to talk about how we first of all populate the scene. So what happens is that there's the open file that we have created, which is of the site itself, and what we also have, we have created a separate file which has the twin model house. So by going into File and click on Import, we can actually bring in the model of the house itself. And therefore what happens is we can then position it onto the site itself. So by using the Move tool, we can exactly locate it where we wish the model to be. From there, we can then click on the right click and to duplicate. And so we can then start adding additional models of the twin house itself, and so forth. We can then start populating the site itself. So by using the move tool, we can actually start to formulate the proposal itself. So one of the main concerns that we need to think about is that once we brought the model in, we need to make sure that the model itself is actually sited within the model itself. So we by using the zoom tool and then using the move tool, we can then link all the models together, and therefore we can actually position them all at once and actually embed them into the ground. And so that once we have done that, we can now then start to populate the site, because it's literally is bringing in these objects such as street lights, trees, cars, people. Will actually start to give an idea of exactly how the proposal will look. And so it's bringing in real life scenes, and therefore what we can do is that we can then create a scene for each of the processes that we want. We can then bring on, and once we're actually in the model format, we can then edit how we wish the model to look like. And so one of the big issues that we have is the background image. So we can use Google Maps to bring back images, or we can actually bring in an image itself. And the simple process to do that is literally just by going into styles and coming down and to select and clicking on the watermark settings. So by adjusting the various components, and therefore what happens is we can then bring in our image. So by clicking on the plus symbol, we can actually bring in the image as of our background. Now what we've tried to do, we've tried to get an image that's close to the scene itself. So you know, we have the river, we have houses in the background, and so this is what's really given it real-time view of how the site will look. And so the factor is that we need to that once we've brought the image in, we have a dialog box. So we need to make sure that we stretch to fit the screen, and then by clicking on the finished object, you see that what happens is it then maps all the way around the scene itself. We can then adjust the ground in order to actually meet with it, so that visually it looks correct. So this is the latter things that we will do when we're actually formulating our models itself. And so the other thing that we need to look at, we can actually define how the shadows are going to work. So one of the important things is to establish the geolocation of the site itself, and then we can then use the timeline to identify which time of year, what time of day it's going to be, so we can actually control exactly where the shadows, and we have this kind of realistic illustration behind what we're trying to communicate. So the other thing that we can do, we can then create an animation. And so the factor is that by going onto scene 1 and then right clicking and play animation, we can actually select through the various scenes that we have created. So in this particular case, we've actually created 6 scenes, one for each of the elements of the site itself, from plan, elevations to 3D, and then on completion of formulating the sequence, we can export the video file as an animation. And so consequently what happens is, we can save it, and then we can then send that to our clients to explain exactly what we are thinking about. So what's happening is that we have created 6 scenes. So the first one is the top view, second one is the front view, then we have right views, left view, and then we have back view, and then we have a perspective view. And it's using these views will actually enable us to communicate our design process. So one of the things that we can do, we can then change as to how we're going to view it, whether we choose to actually make it in a simple line drawing, or whether we actually want to make it in with textures added. So by simply clicking onto the view set and then moving along the styles, we can actually formulate how the styles are going to look. And so whether that's going to be a plan view or an elevation view, but there's no reason why we can't have them different, or we can keep them all the same. So you have that kind of choice. So the second part of today's webinar is to talk about the layout book. Now what the layout book does, this provides us with a tool where we can actually import not just our SketchUp files, but we can also bring in images of other things that we want to use in order to actually convey our proposals. So what it is, it's basically like a digital portfolio. So where do we start? Layout book is a separate component to SketchUp. It's part of the SketchUp family. So when you have your license, you will notice that you will have your SketchUp file and you will have your layout book. So to start off, what we need to do, we need to open the layout book, and you will see that there are a series of styles that we have in there, and we also have a series of page sizes, whether they happen to be A1 or down A4, A3. We can select whether it's plain paper or whether it's in graphs. And so by opening up the folder itself, we can click on the box that says more templates, and so in more templates, these are predefined templates that have been created from contemporary down to modern. We can then choose the format, whether it's going to be landscape or portrait, and also the size itself. So once we've actually chosen which of the templates that we wish to work with, we can then start to formulate and actually to customize it. And so by going into the file and the insert box, we can then bring our logo and actually apply that to the sheet. And so consequently what happens is that by setting up our sheet itself, so here we have an A3 sheet in landscape format. We have our logo. On the right hand side there are a series of dialog boxes that we can select, and by clicking onto these boxes we can actually formulate exactly that we can customize exactly what we need for that particular project. So once we've done that, we then need to click on Save as a Template, and then by naming it, so when you go out of Layout Book and come back again, you can go into My Templates, and we have our template which is set up for us to move on for our next project. And so consequently what happens is that by using the file import, we can actually bring in our files. One of the things that we need to think about, so we're going to File, we're going to Open Object. We can then actually select the scale. So predominantly here in the UK is that the we are going to be in metric, and so what we need to think about, well, how big, if we've got an A3 sheet, we need to make so it's big enough for people to view. So what we've done in this particular case, we have an A3 drawing, and we've gone to scale, and we've simply come down and selected 1 to 50 scale. So it tells you when you bring it in the scale that it's created. In this case, it's 1 to 65, which is not a recognised scale here in the UK or anywhere else in the world to that fact. So consequently, by 1 to 50, it is a recognised scale. And so consequently, what happens is that we can select the one image that we have on the sheet itself. We can actually hold Control key, and what happens is we can duplicate it. By going into the next image, we can actually change it. So in fact, if scene 1 has to be the plan view, scene 2 has to be an elevation view, we can select that scene. And so consequently what happens is the process that we are working is by adding in these the various drawings. So the factor is that we can add more sheets. We can duplicate a sheet and go in and just simply click back onto again. This time we're going to just change the view setting, so we're not having to forever bring in a new file. It is there. And so what happens is that we can formulate our sheets. We have at the bottom of the default tray, we have the various pages. And therefore we can actually move those pages up or down. We can rename them, we can delete them, we can add to them, and so consequently what happens is we can articulate our ideas very succinctly, so that we can then export this into several modes. So what the layout book enables us to do is to actually, once we've actually formulated our ideas, we can then simply export it. And so by going to File, click on Export, we have a choice whether we want to actually create them as images files, so whether you might drop those into a PowerPoint presentation, or whether you want to send them as a PDF file, or whether you want to, if you're going to go into creating a 3D model, which is either laser cut, you can export it into a DWG DXF file, so that you can move it on again. So you're not having to redo it and redo it and redo it. So once we have chosen the format that we want to go into, obviously we need to actually, we can decide how many pages are we going to print. All 3 pages. So in this particular case, we've decided to go for PDF. There are 6 pages, and then simply by clicking on the export button, we can then export our model itself.
Yep, I can see it.
Perfect.
Right. So as Ray mentioned, today we're just going to go through populating the model and creating various scenes. So that's the first part of it. The second part is taking a SketchUp model and preparing it for layout, and then exporting it and bringing it into layout. So we had a brief introduction to bringing in files and components in last week's webinar. So for that, similar to that, we're going to go and start, and I'm going to import the house file as Ray had mentioned. There we go. So you can position it in the top view and then just adjust it so that it aligns within the site. I'm just going to rotate it. I'm just using the move tool onto a component. So when you create a component, you use the move tool, you automatically get these grips that come up, and you can just click on it and you can rotate it using your left mouse button. I'm just going to move that there, and then I can zoom in. And I can align it there. I'm going to make a copy of this, again using the move tool, and we did this last week, is hold the control key down, which gives us a plus sign, and that copies the house. And I think the house is moved below, so I'm going to do that again. I can use the move tool anywhere on this screen. It doesn't have to be on the component itself. Sometimes just to use any other area of the screen helps. So I'm going to move that somewhere around there. Enter, just click the enter button. I'm going to select both of them now and further make copies of both. Enter. Again, I can individually move them. I can zoom in, pan around, zoom in closer to the site. I can rotate it ever so slightly so that they align with the edge of the site. Oops, that's rotated a bit too much. Don't crash on me now. Let's try again. Perfect, and move that to the back. I am going to rotate, use the orbit tool, and that's your middle wheel on your mouse, and you can, if you push that down, the orbit tool's activated, and you can move it to bring your model into a perspective view. I'm going to add that as a scene. So you now have two scenes. One's the top view, and the second one is the isometric. I can still move these around because I've got space here. Obviously, it depends on your site, on how many models you have, what your measurements are, but it's just visually, I'm just going to move it so that they are visually, looks nicer. Then I'm going to select all of them. So I'm going to hold the Shift key down, which gives me the plus and minus on my cursor. And that means I can select them all at one go. I'm going to zoom in to the first house, and you can see that they are fairly high up over the ground. So I'm going to move them so that they are, and for me to know that there's exactly in the right direction, I can hold the Shift key down, which then gives me the movement in either the top blue axis or the green axis.
No, we aren't missed out.
My machine is giving me problems. There we go. I can then orbit around and create more scenes. So I can have a scene. You can just create different views so that you can present your work and have various different scenes and various views. For your presentations. I'm just going to zoom out. I'm going to add a scene. So we have that. I'm now going to bring in trees. Basically, like we went through last week, you've got the 3D warehouse where you can bring in components, people, trees, cars, playgrounds and things like that. And I have already downloaded a tree. Just type in tree. It brings up several different ones that you can bring in. I'm going to use one that I've already downloaded previously. So file, import. I'm going to use this scatter tree. That brings in the tree, and exactly like we did with the houses, I'm just going to make a copy of that tree by holding my control key down. And making a copy. Come on. So move to control key, copy, enter. I can move that tree back a little. My machine is just so very slow. I'm going to import a playground that I had downloaded, again from the 3D warehouse. I'm just going to place that there. So I can look at it in and my machine is doing something very strange. The playground's disappeared. Let's try again. File, import. Placed some benches along. I've placed cars. And I can orbit around. You can see the people, the street lights. So you can populate this scene very quickly. These are 2D people, but the way SketchUp works is when you place them and create them and bring them in, these ones are from the 3D warehouse, and they will always face the camera. So no matter what angle you look at them from, you will always see just the front section because they're set to always face the camera. They are 3D people. You can bring 3D people in, but they are very heavy and they're intensive where the file is concerned, where the file size is concerned. And the more components you have in a SketchUp file, the larger the file gets, and it just gets impossible sometimes to work with, especially if you don't have a very powerful machine. So these are the various scenes that I had created. What we're going to do now is we are going to bring in a background image. And I tried to get one that was similar to the Silhouette, but everything that's available online has got either a wrong angle or has got some graffiti. So I couldn't get anything for the actual site, but tried to get something very similar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that and just show you how that works. So at the moment, we've got the standard default style in the model. If you go to edit, you've got the different tabs that you can make changes to your styles. You can have depth Q, which means that it will increase the size of your lines. It doesn't really show on that. It normally is. You've got your extension lines, which means that if you zoom in, I can show you. The extension lines, if you can see very faintly, you see that there is crosses, like drafting when initially when people used to draft using paper and pen, you used to get these cross lines, and you can see in this style that some of the lines are thicker and they actually cross intersect. But for this particular file, we're not going to use any of that. We're just going to use profiles. I'm going to go back to my view. Moving along, so I'm going to go to the watermark tab. I'm going to bring in the image. And it comes, a new dialog box comes up where it's asking me whether I want it as a background or an overlay. So if you want to use a logo and you wanted to use it in the front of the image, so you just wanted a little watermark at one of the corners, then you would use the overlay option. In this particular instance, we want to use it in the background. So I'm going to use the background option. I'm going to go to next. I don't need any of these because those are for the foreground settings. I can go to next. I need to select stretch to fit the screen because I want it in the back. But if I have, I'll just do this to show you. Display watermark, don't forget to tick that, and you see what happens is it just extends it to that section. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back in there, go to settings and untick lock aspect ratio, because what that does is it stretches it right across the screen. So I show you what that is. That's just an image that has come in, and I'm going to position my model using my move tool and rotate tool to have it positioned in a way where it sort of looks presentable. It's not going to affect my image, my model. I'm just going to position the model. Oops. And once I have that, I can right click, update the scene. The other thing you can add to the scene is your shadow, your sun settings. By clicking that, you see you get the shadows. This is quite good because you can go through the months of the year, the time of the day. Under location settings, you can actually add the correct longitude and latitude of the area, which I did. I found out the geolocation of the London docks, and you can set a manual. You can put in your details, and these are available on Google. They're available on Google Maps. You can just type in geolocation of an address and it comes up, and you just need to copy that in, and that then gives you your exact shadow studies during the year. So you know where your shadows are going to be cast, at what time of the day, at what time of the month. You can add all that in. I think it even goes to the point where you can even add a date, and it will show you exactly where your shadows will be. For this instance, we're not going to get into that because we are running out of time. So hopefully that sort of showed you, and obviously, from last week, we know how to bring models and input them into a file. You can rotate it around your different views. You can set the model up so that you've got, and don't forget to update your scenes. Right, any questions?
There's no questions so far, Mita. Thank you.
Good. Right. We'll move on to the next section of the presentation, which is preparing your file for layout. So for this instance, we're going to open up the file with the twin house model, which Ray and I have worked on, and just brought it in. So instead of the ghastly colors we had last week, we've just added textures and put in the window panels, putting some exterior textures, put in a glass balcony, and just presented it for this file. Again, for this section, I'm going to create various scenes. I'm going to start off with the top view, and that you can use from your views toolbar. So click on top view. When you start, when you bring in your models, you are in perspective mode. So for layout, you need to make sure that it's parallel projection, so that you've got the exact view. So it's a top view, it's not in parallel, it's an exact bird's eye view. So I'm going to update the scene. I am going to add a scene and change that to front view. Update the scene. I'm going to add a scene and change it to right. Update. Add a scene. Back. Update. Left. Update. And the last scene, I'm going to have an isometric. And update the scene. So you've got your various scenes. You've got the first scene, the second, if you wanted to export this out as a small animation, you could do that by just right-clicking on your first scene, play animation, and that will play the whole scene as an animation. If you wanted to send that to your client or to a work colleague or anybody to show them how the presentation would look as an animation, you can do that by going to, so I'm going to go to the first scene, File, Export, 3D animation. This is very basic. It's a very basic animation that you can export out. It automatically exports it out as an MP4. You've got your options where you can change that, but just the normal, and you can export it out of SketchUp. So if you've created various scenes, you can export it out either while it's in construction mode, so you can show your floor plan, then you can show the construction to the first floor, second floor, and you can build it up and actually export it out as a presentation, as an animation. We are now going to change the style for this, and in this particular one, we are going to use your hidden line mode, which brings up, just takes off the color and brings up just your line work. I particularly prefer to export out my drawings to layout with just the profile set to 1, because then you get your really fine lines that look really good when you present them within layout. So I can update my scene. The second one, you find that the moment you do one, it updates them all automatically. If I actually wanted to have that as your textured, I can update that. Update the scene. And you can have your styles in various, your scenes in various styles. So once you've decided what you want, you just save your file and you then go into layout. Sorry, there we go. Right. It gives you various different paper spaces. Basically, layout is like your presentation space. So when you are presenting your floor plans, your elevational plans, you can create different templates. So layout already comes installed with SketchUp Pro. So when you install it, you get layout as an add-on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into more templates. For this particular exercise, I'm going to use the standard it should have gosh, it's not even giving me the option of a title block. There we go. Right, so I'm going to use the simple architectural landscape, which is predefined. And we're going to change the details on there to, as like Ray said, you can bring in your logos, you can add in your company name, your client name, your project details, your elevational details, and it automatically brings the drawing number. You can change all that to suit your individual needs. For this particular instance, we are going to just delete that. And like SketchUp, I'm going to go to File, Insert. I'm going to bring in the company logo. I can resize it. And move it there. I can go in there and change the company name and add the company details. I am not going to go into any of the other details, but just to give you a rough indication that you can go in there and change all the details on there. Once you've got your title block, like you're happy with what you have, you can save it as a template and you can give it a name. I've already got one in that name, so I'm just going to call that, and I can start working in it. So the next time you open up a file, you can go to My Templates and you can just bring your own template in. Right, we're going to bring in the SketchUp file that we did with the twin house. So to do that, I'm going to go to File, Insert. I'm going to bring in the twin house model. Layout and SketchUp are linked, so if you make any changes to your SketchUp model, once you've brought it into layout, you can still update it and layout will update it automatically. So if you have changes, you've changed a texture, or you've made an extension, or you've gotten rid of some part of the building, when you launch layout, it will tell you that there has been a change to your SketchUp model. You can update it from there, and layout will automatically update all your files within layout. So I can create a viewport of the model and it automatically resizes it. It snaps to it sort of, you know, if I wanted to move it, you find that it just snaps automatically, and it's a bit fidgety when you want to move it about. If I just remove the object snap, then I can move it anywhere and it doesn't snap to anything. So I'm going to move that there. I am going to copy that viewport. You can have a bounding box around it, and for that I can click on stroke, and it automatically brings up a bounding box. I can copy that viewport. So again, the same way, same functions, your move tool, your control key, and I can copy the whole viewport onto the title block. I can position it. Once I've done that, I can go in there. If I right click and the scale, it comes in at a current scale. I want to scale my viewport to 1:50. And what that does is it scales the drawing to 1:50. Make sure that when you have your SketchUp model, when you are scaling it, it's your viewport is ticked to preserve scale on resize, because what that does is it preserves, I can scale my viewport, but it doesn't scale the model. So to center the, click it, and it automatically centers it. I can move it to the top, click out. When you double click on a viewport to center it like that, it loses your original scale. So I can go in there and reassign 1:50. I can change the scene on that viewport, and I can go in and assign. So it's connected to your SketchUp scenes that you had created in your SketchUp model. I can change that viewport to make it slightly smaller. Again, you can change your styles on how you present that, because it's connected with your SketchUp model. And if I wanted to change that to a different style, I can do that within layout. So I want to bring in the different scenes, but before I go into a different, before I go to duplicate the page, I just want to quickly show you how you can add dimensions to your layout files. If you click on dimension, and this is bringing it in. I had this problem earlier, and it's a bug that I have within my SketchUp install, because I use a beta version and it does not like different. I didn't want to do that. Right. It's for some bizarre reason, it's bringing my dimensions in metric. I'm going to try and change it. It keeps reverting back to metric. I have no idea why, even though my system's set to
there we go,
millimeters, but I will just. Do you see? It keeps reverting back. I have no idea why. Sorry, guys. Once you set your dimensions, it shouldn't do that. But I've got a bug on my SketchUp file, on my SketchUp install, which is making it do that. So I do apologize. I can change that.
Yeah. One of the things you do, so interrupt me, is that that when you're setting up your template file, you just make sure that you actually set up your dimensions and where they are and the accuracy of those dimensions. But that again, what happens is we're probably getting a few bugs coming in because of the way that we're presenting today.
You can add call out buttons, and you can say, you can add little notes to say grass wall. You can add all these little bits within layout. You can give this a name and say red brick. I'm going to duplicate this page and have various different styles or scenes within my different pages. So to do that, I just go to page, duplicate page, and I can then go in there and just change the view. And it doesn't want to do that. Sorry, I really have to apologize for this today. It is not changing the scenes as I want them to. There we go. You can quickly change what scene you want. That one doesn't want to do it. I can delete it. Delete that. I'm just going to make a copy of that and see if I can change the view on that. It doesn't even want to copy. Oh my god! I am so.
Yeah, it's called IT.
It's called computers.
There you go. You have it.
Sorry, I mean this is just so straightforward. I promise you guys, it's.
There we go.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah.
And I can change the style of that one. And look what it's done. It's brought in two. Let's see if we can change that. And it doesn't want to.
Voila.
There we go. So really you can bring in and change the views, and it is simple. It's not rocket science. It's not complicated, but today for some bizarre reason it's just making life really difficult. I can duplicate that, and I can bring in my final stage, I can bring the completed model, the populated model of the site. Again, file, insert. I can make sure that I'm bringing the right file in. again, I can position that. And change the view. So quickly you've got, I can bring up all the windows that I have here, and I can change that to show the different page. And I can then go in and export the whole slideshow into a PDF. Any questions? I'm sorry if it was a bit rushed out in the end.
No, that's fine, Nita. That's good. That's excellent. No, there are no questions on here. Great. Okay.
I'll just stop sharing. Wait, I'll stop sharing so that you can take back on here.
So just to conclude today's webinar, next week we have our workshop at East London University. The workshop is scheduled to commence at 12:30. It's a 3-hour workshop. We've been allocated a room which is KD13A. And so what the agenda is that for activity 1 we're going to talk about planning your site and design considerations. Then we're going to actually model up a SketchUp model. In this case we're going to create a sustainable house. Then we'll have a little 10-minute break, and that's going to be followed by a question and answers and some feedback. I would appreciate that you please get there no later than 12:20, so that we can actually make a prompt start at 12:30 itself. I put the telephone number on for Chris Okonoko in case you get lost and you can't find it, but you can also phone either myself on my mobile, which is 07831 579 152, or you can call Mita. Location of East London University is, if you are going by train, probably the best way is to take the line to the Cyprus DLR station, and from there, literally, it's about a 5-minute walk from there to the Knowledge Centre, which I've circled on here, which is where our workshop will be held. So I've added the directions in case you're coming from further away. So using the Docklands Light Railway, you need to make sure that you're actually on the eastbound towards but not the city airport. Okay, and obviously make sure that you get at the Cyprus DLR station. Usual impact links for more information regarding the design challenge, and on that I will conclude, and I will thank you very, very much. Just a brief note for webinar 6, which is going to be on the 23rd of February at 4 p.m. And what we'll be talking about then is using our ideas to sketch up the site. So we're going to look at things like planning and analysis. Anyway, thank you all very, very much, and look forward to you joining us at the workshop, and thank you for attending today.